the latest intelligence coming out right now is that the United States operation on the Iranian nuclear facilities was largely a failure. A centrifuge at one of the facilities remains intact. It did damage some of these nuclear facilities, but the nuclear facilities can be made operational in a few months potentially. And also it's being reported as well that Iran's enriched uranium stockpile was largely moved before U.S. strikes, according to a new New York Times report. Also, the New York Times is confirming an exclusive by CNN that the nuclear sites were damaged, but they were not destroyed, rendering the mission by and large a failure, in stark contradiction to what Donald Trump was repeatedly posting over and over again. Donald Trump had posted that all of the nuclear sites were absolutely obliterated. He declared an absolute success. He said that the damage to the nuclear sites were monumental. But with everything that Donald Trump says, you always have to kind of take a step back because he is always lying. There was supposed to be a bipartisan briefing earlier today in the House and in the Senate. It was going to be Democrats and Republicans from the House and Senate Intelligence Committees, people with top-level classified access. This classified meeting was abruptly canceled at Donald Trump's demand. Donald Trump refused to make people from his administration accessible. He claims that it was just to delay it for Thursday, but I think that, especially now as we're getting some of the information, it obviously seems that Donald Trump was trying to cover up the latest intelligence out there, which is that these operations that Trump was bragging about did not achieve the objective of the mission. Let's go through what we know right now. So CNN dropped the exclusive early U.S. intel assessment, suggests that the strikes on Iran did not destroy nuclear sites. The U.S. military strikes on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities last weekend did not destroy the core components of the country's nuclear program and likely only set it back by months, according to an early U.S. intelligence assessment that was described by 4 people briefed on it. The assessment, which has not been previously reported, was produced by the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Pentagon's intelligence arm. It is based on a battle damage assessment conducted by U.S. Central Command in the aftermath of the U.S. strikes, according to sources. Now, I think one of the reasons that this leaked was this information was supposed to be provided in a classified setting to Congress earlier in the day before the Trump regime canceled it. We now have a statement out from Trump regime propagandist Caroline Leavitt. She says the following: the alleged assessment is flat out wrong and was classified as top secret, but was still leaked to CNN by an anonymous low-level loser in the intelligence community. Pause right there. So isn't she essentially admitting it right there? You take away all of the stuff they say, look, loser and all of that. But, you know, if they're saying that this was a top secret classified assessment, isn't she essentially admitting that that's what the assessment said? She goes on to say, the leaking of this alleged assessment is a clear attempt to demean President Trump and discredit the brave fighter pilots who conducted a perfectly executed mission to obliterate Iran's nuclear program. Everyone knows what happens when you drop 14 30,000-pound bombs perfectly on their targets. Total obliteration. We do know what happens when the Trump regime speaks. They lie about absolutely everything, and that appears to be what is taking place as well. New York Times reporting the strike set back Iran's nuclear program by only a few months. The U.S. report says now that the New York Times has its hands on those reports as well. Also, seems like the ceasefire that Donald Trump claimed existed, which we were telling you seemed to be BS as well, that is not being followed either. The latest data that we have from Israel's military chief of staff, they say the campaign against Iran is not over and that strikes will almost certainly continue. No wonder Donald Trump's approval right now has sunk to 40%. His disapproval's at 50%. This is Trump's lowest approval from the Gallup poll, and it's consistent with the Quinnipiac we showed you, the YouGov, the Reuters Ipsos, which all have him anywhere from around 38 to 40% approval, some of the worst approval rankings in presidential history at this time. Okay, let's talk about Trump canceling the hearing earlier today, the classified briefing that was supposed to take place on the Hill. Democratic Congress member Jason Crow announced, completely unacceptable. The Trump administration canceled our briefing. Congress and the American people deserve answers from the Trump administration. America does not want to be pulled into another Middle East conflict. We deserve answers now. Who was supposed to be at the briefing? Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, Director of the CIA, General Dan Kane, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Christopher Landau, Deputy Secretary of State, and Stephen Feinberg, Deputy Secretary of Defense. Marco Rubio was never supposed to be there anyway. You saw the list right there. So the fact that they're using it as an excuse that Rubio is not there is total BS. One of the things that we also know as well is that the Iranian Parliament Committee has approved a general plan to suspend all cooperation with the IAEA, according to multiple news agencies and according to Iranian TV. Now, this is significant because all Donald Trump has done now is cause Iran to speed up its nuclear program and now have absolutely zero oversight from the IAEA, and also Iran leaning into its allies abroad, Russia, China, and North Korea, following the failed strikes by the United States. I reported earlier, as New York Times did, officials were conceding that they did not know the fate of Iran's uranium stockpile, but there was lots of photographs leading up to the U.S. strikes that showed 15 to 17 Iranian trucks going into the facility, and many people believe that that's was triggered by Donald Trump announcing his intentions on social media and bragging about it at various press conferences that Donald Trump had, that also we were covering here on the MeidasTouch network. So from that New York Times article, there was evidence, according to 2 Israeli officials. Now that's confirmed by our own damage assessment by our Department of Defense. These Israeli officials with knowledge of the intelligence talked about how Iran had moved equipment and uranium from the site in recent days. And there was growing evidence that the Iranians, attuned to Mr. Trump's repeated threats to take military action, had removed 400 kilograms, or roughly 880 pounds, of uranium enriched to 60% purity. This is just below the 90% that is usually used for nuclear-grade weapons. Democratic Congress member and veteran Pat Ryan, he said the following: Trump just canceled a classified House briefing on the Iran strikes with zero explanation. The real reason, he claims he destroyed all nuclear facilities and capability. His team knows they can't back up his bluster and BS. Here's what they're scared we'll ask. Immediately after the strikes, Trump claimed the nuclear facilities were completely and totally obliterated. He lied, and likely still doesn't know the full damage assessment. And now Congressmember Pat Ryan posted that before we now learned that the damage assessment says that this operation was largely a failure. What he does know is that an unsuccessful strike dramatically increases the chance Iran races to break out. J.D. Vance admitted that they have no clue about the status of the 900 pounds of highly enriched uranium. The entire logic of the attack was that Iran was imminently building a nuclear weapon. If that's the case, not that they've shared the intel, then the 900 pounds of the uranium is a huge problem. They also can't get their briefers on the same page. Every one of the people who was supposed to come today has a different conclusion on how close Iran was to breaking out and how successful the operation was. Tulsi Gabbard probably still doesn't know it was canceled. A few other questions I prepared. How are we protecting U.S. troops in the region from the PMF and other Iranian-backed militias? How are we ensuring we keep the Strait of Hormuz open? Is there elevated risk to the homeland? And something I probably should have started with, his team sure as hell wasn't ready to explain to Congress how this strike was even constitutional, or why they broke long-standing precedent and only briefed Republican members of the bipartisan Gang of Eight prior to the strikes. I'm hoping for peace. I'm praying for peace, but I will not, and the American people cannot take Trump's lies on topics of this magnitude sitting down. Here is Democratic Congressman and caucus chair Pete Aguilar after the House-wide classified briefing on Iran and Israel was postponed. And now we know it was likely postponed because of the damage assessment that just came out, showing that the strikes were largely a failure. Here's Congressmember Aguilar. Let's play this clip right here.
Good afternoon. Members, today we're supposed to receive a classified briefing from the Trump administration, but clearly the chaos and the confusion coming out of the White House made that impossible. It is completely unacceptable that Congress has not been briefed on this in a timely fashion. We need evidence, we need details, and we need to know them now. There are a number of outstanding questions, including whether this attack achieved the administration's stated goals. Launching an attack without congressional authorization is wrong. Launching a potentially unsuccessful attack without congressional authorization would be an administration-defining failure.
If you're like me, instead of learning to skateboard, you wish you were learning to write code. And instead of scraping through college, you wish you bought Bitcoin at less than a cent or secured a few NVIDIA shares before they boomed. We might be the FOMO generation, but don't miss out on protecting your future. For around the same price per month as one of your streaming services, you can break our generational cycle and secure your and your family's future by finding life insurance at SelectQuote.com. For over 40 years, SelectQuote has helped more than 2 million Americans understand their options and get the coverage that they need. Over $700 billion in coverage and counting. Now, as a broker, their mission is simple: to find you the right insurance policy at the best price. SelectQuote takes the guesswork out of finding the right life insurance policy. SelectQuote also works with providers who offer same-day coverage up to $2 million worth with no medical exam required. And you're not out of luck if you have a pre-existing health condition, because SelectQuote partners with companies that offer policies for people with conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, or heart disease. SelectQuote makes life insurance simple, even if this is your first time thinking about it. Life insurance is never cheaper than it is today. Get the right life insurance for you for less and save more than 50% at SelectQuote.com/Meidas. Save more than 50% on term life insurance at SelectQuote.com/Meidas today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/Meidas.
Now, earlier in the day, we started getting some significant hints that this operation was not a success. One of those hints came in the form of Speaker of the House MAGA Mike Johnson. When he was asked about the success of the strikes, he responded that we're under no illusions that you can just kill all their nuclear ambitions overnight. Here, play this clip.
After we crashed them.
Can I just tell you that right now, Mr. Speaker, Reuters is reporting Iran's nuclear chief says we're going to immediately start reconstituting our nuclear program. I mean,
How do you negotiate with that?
Are you kidding me?
It's madness. I mean, we're under no illusion that you can just kill all their nuclear ambition overnight. But I think reality has set in over there. We have decimated the upper echelon of their military command, as well as their nuclear scientists. I mean, there's not much left for them to rebuild upon. But the idea that they would put out a statement like that at this fragile moment is very frustrating. It goes.
Well, it's funny you say that, MAGA Mike, because Donald Trump is under that delusion or illusion, because he's claiming that there's now peace and everything is great. And all of his posts today was the war is over. We're done. It's called the 12-day war. I did it. Donald Trump keeps posting memes that says Trump was right about everything when he's wrong and lies about everything. Maybe that's what the meme should say. He's posting weird paintings of himself with his fist up. And then the MAGA Republican Congress members and senators and propagandists on Fox yesterday, they were all out there saying Trump should win a Nobel Peace Prize for what he did. Here they are on Hannity. You've got MAGA Republican senators and Hannity and others. Senator Britt, MAGA Republican Senator Britt, for example, saying he should win a Nobel Peace Prize. Play this clip.
Absolutely. Look, President Trump is going to win the Nobel Peace Prize, no doubt. You look at what he's done with the Congo and Rwanda. You look at where he is with Pakistan and India and what he's done there. And then you look at this. what everyone talked about but no one thought was possible. He has brought peace to a region that needed stability. He has shown what America First policy actually is. He's made sure that he's preserving American lives.
Here's Kayleigh McEnany saying that Trump should get a peace prize. Play this clip.
So rather than World War III, we may get more peace. And rather than 34 felony counts, President Trump may end up with 34 Nobel Peace Prizes. That was for the leftists. You can clip this and make it go viral and go nuts.
And here's Don Jr. posting, affirmative action is when Barack Obama gets the Nobel Peace Prize instead of Donald Trump. So they also have to make like a racist remark as well. And then our editor-in-chief, Ron Filipkowski, goes, they're really upset about this Peace Prize thing. And that's what I've been saying all along. Donald Trump wanted those photographs of him in the Situation Room looking like a tough guy. If you look at Donald Trump's Instagram feed, it's all posts of himself in the Situation Room acting tough and looking tough. But at the end of the day, what we saw here was nothing more than just complete and absolute weakness. By the way, Donald Trump earlier today, when he was asked about some of the reporting from CNN and MSNBC, when some of the data started to come in that these strikes on the Iranian nuclear sites were not a success, he started just saying CNN is scum, MSDNC is scum. He said that it's demolished. Here's what he had to say. Here, play this clip.
I think it's been completely demolished. I think the reason we're here is because those pilots, those B-2 pilots, did an unbelievable job. And, you know, the fake news, like CNN in particular, they're trying to say, well, I agree that it was destroyed, but maybe not that destroyed. You know what they're doing? They're really hurting great pilots that put their lives in the line. CNN is scum, and so is MSDNC. They're all, and frankly, the networks aren't much better. It's all fake news, but they should not have done that. Those pilots hit their targets. Those targets were obliterated, and the pilots should be given credit. They're not after the pilots, they're after me. They want to try and demean.
When Marco Rubio was asked on Sunday if our intelligence actually showed that Iran had nuclear grade capability, notice that Secretary of State Rubio said that that's irrelevant. Wouldn't that be the most relevant thing? Here, play this clip.
Are you saying there that the United States did not see intelligence that the Supreme Leader had ordered weaponization?
That's irrelevant. I see that question being asked on the media. That's an irrelevant question.
No,
they have
that is the key point in U.S. intelligence assessments. You know that.
No, it's not.
Yes, it was.
No, it's
that
not.
The political decision had not been made.
I know that better than you know that, and I know that that's not the case.
But I'm asking you whether the order was given.
And the people who say that, it doesn't matter if the order was given. They have everything they need to build nuclear weapons. Why would you bury things in a mountain, 300 feet under the ground?
Right.
Why would you bury why do they have 60% enriched uranium? You don't need 60% enriched uranium. The only countries in the world that have uranium at 60% are countries that have nuclear weapons. Because they can quickly make it 90. They have all the elements. They have. Why do they have a space program? Is Iran going to go to the moon? No, they're trying to build an ICBM.
No, but
so
that's a question. That's a question. That's a question of intent. And you know, in the intelligence assessment, that it was that Iran wanted to be a threshold state and use this leverage. I'm talking about the public March assessment, and that's why I was asking you if you know something more from March.
But that's also an inaccurate representation of it. That's an accurate representation of it. That's not how intelligence is read. That's not how intelligence is used.
Now, Donald Trump is in The Hague right now, where he is currently, which is in the Netherlands, where he was currently getting booed as his car pulled up. Let me show you that. Let's play this clip. And finally, you heard from me there. Let me share with you how this was reported by CNN moments ago. And hat tip to them. They broke this exclusive. Here's what they had to say. Play this clip.
This is CNN breaking news.
We have major breaking news into CNN. 3 sources tell CNN that according to an early U.S. intelligence assessment, the U.S. military strikes on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities last weekend did not destroy the core components of the country's nuclear program and likely only set it back a few months.
That's right. So this is an assessment that actually is out from the Defense Intelligence Agency. That is the Pentagon's intelligence arm. And it was based on a battle damage assessment conducted by U.S. CENTCOM after the strikes, according to one of the sources. Let's go to CNN national security correspondent Natasha Bertrand, who has this exclusive new reporting. This is to that question that has been asked about how much damage has been done. This is a real question. It's also a political question that has been to something that Donald Trump has been sort of dealing with here recently. What are you learning, Natasha?
Yeah, look, Brianna, this is the first assessment that we are getting that the U.S. intelligence community has found about the battle damage that resulted from those U.S. military strikes on these 3 Iranian nuclear facilities over the weekend. And as you said, it was produced by the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is the Pentagon's intelligence arm. And it is worth noting that it is a very early assessment. The strikes were only a matter of days ago, and the intelligence community is still gathering intelligence. They are still working to come up with a full, comprehensive picture of what exactly happened here. But based on a battle damage assessment that was carried out by U.S. Central Command, essentially looking at the images and looking at what was actually damaged, the Defense Intelligence Agency has assessed that the core components of Iran's nuclear program are largely intact, and that Iran's nuclear program has essentially only been set back by months. Now, we presented this information to the White House for comment, and White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt, she did acknowledge the existence of this assessment, but she said in a statement that the administration disagrees with it. She said, quote, "This alleged assessment is flat out wrong and was classified as top secret, but was still leaked to CNN by an anonymous low-level loser in the intelligence community. The leaking of this alleged assessment is a clear attempt to demean President Trump and discredit the brave fighter pilots who conducted a perfectly executed mission to obliterate Iran's nuclear program. Everyone knows what happens when you drop 14 30,000-pound bombs perfectly on their targets, total obliteration." Now, it is worth noting here that there has been dissent, I should say, within the intelligence community, within the defense community, about just how much of an impact these massive bunker buster bombs would actually have on Iran's nuclear facilities. It was far from certain, given that these bombs had never been tested in an actual combat scenario, whether they would actually penetrate those very, very deep underground tunnels that lie underneath these nuclear facilities. And what we are told is that as of now, this Defense Intelligence Agency assessment, it does conclude at this point, again, it is still very early, that those underground facilities, including the centrifuges, including the highly enriched uranium that everyone has been talking so much about, those are largely intact.
Well, there you have it, folks. All hell is breaking loose again. You have Trump canceling meetings. He's getting booed at The Hague. We'll keep you posted with more right here on the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe and help us get to 6 million subscribers. Thank you for watching.
The truth is more important than ever. Check out our new Truth Over Lies collection at store.meidastouch.com. All 100% USA union made.